young.
Tyra,
You guys need to express
we're tired of all your bitching out there.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so exhausted right now. I think it's almost 11. I guess that's not too late, but I've just done so much today. I had chemistry, and my professor loves to lecture into lab, and lab is 3.5 hours, and lecture is an hour and 20 minutes, and she usually goes over that, but so it's in total probably 4.5 hours of just straight chemistry. She doesn't really give you a break. Sometimes she'll give you a 10-minute break, but it's super rare. But anyway, so I've just done 4.5 hours of chemistry, and then I knew that I had to come up with something to talk about for this week's episode, because I have a list on my phone. I don't know if anyone else does this, but I have a huge list on my phone of all the topics that I want to cover, just in general, and any series that I have, ideas and stuff like that. I keep it in my phone, so it's super easy just to look at topics, kind of see what goes together, and pick kind of usually 3 main points. So basically, I don't know, this week I just wasn't really feeling anything, and then so I asked you guys what I should record, and a lot of you guys, well, actually I think only one person, I'm acting like I have a lot of people that care about me, but I'm pretty sure one, I forgot who it was, I'm sorry, but someone said they wanted me to talk about the coronavirus thing, and kind of the racism behind that, and kind of how, I guess, white vegans, whenever they do something problematic, it's kind of branded as a whole vegan issue instead of just white people doing white people shit. But and so whenever there's a couple vegans doing something awful, it kind of speaks for the whole community, and it's usually white people, which overshadows the extreme amount of good that good white people are doing, and also people of color are doing, especially within the vegan community. So that kind of sucks, but that's a whole nother topic, and I do want to talk about that on its own. But I think in this episode I'm going to focus on kind of the coronavirus, what I've seen, the racism behind it. And if you've read any of my tweets this weekend, I was just going at it, which I usually don't, and I spent way longer on my phone than I should have this weekend. So that was definitely a wake-up call, because I noticed that my mental health was a lot worse when I'm just on my phone all the time. But then again, I mean, there's positive things you can be doing on your phone versus negative things like arguing with random people about dumb shit. But it did make me realize a lot of things about myself, and then also a lot of things about the general public that is just very sad. But anyway, before I get super into this topic and that whole thing and all my main points, today we are going to first I'm going to introduce the kombucha that I'm drinking today, and let me grab it. I was attracted to it because its name is Pink Lady Apple, and it's from the GTS Synergy Organic Kombucha brand. But I was attracted to the name because it kind of reminded me of Grease, the movie, kind of the Pink Ladies, I think that's what they're called, but I could be wrong, I don't know. But I don't know, I saw it and I was that's so cute. And then a lot of the things that I'm working on this year are inspired by Grease and Mean Girls, and kind of that whole Legally Blonde, Powerpuff Girl kind of thing. So a lot of the projects that I'm working on are inspired by Grease. So I don't know, I was attracted to the Pink Lady Apple. It looks beautiful, but I haven't tried it yet. I'm drinking it out of my 2014 champagne glass that my mom got me, and it was when I was graduating, and she threw me a graduation party, which was an interesting party. And she got us all these little wine glasses that said 2014, and I'm pretty sure we just drank soda out of them. But anyway, yeah, I graduated in 2014, if anybody was curious about that. Yes, I am still in college. I am so aware. I am hyper aware that I should have graduated, and everybody I know also should have graduated. But then there comes a time it comes a time where you realize that like you can't live up to like everyone else's expectations of what they think you should be doing at this time in your life. I look at everything that's happened to me and my life and how I ended up the way that I am here, and I don't really feel ashamed that I'm still in college. I think that I learned a lot about college. And anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Anyway, we're drinking the kombucha Pink Lady Apple. It's from the GTS brand, and I like their kombuchas the most out of majority of the kombuchas I've had. And I know the guy who like started GTS, his mom had breast cancer, and when she like was able to heal herself from it, or not cure, but when she was getting treatment for it and it turned out to be a lot better in the end for her, she the doctors kind of were asking her like, what did you do, like did you do anything else besides the treatment or whatever? And she told them that she just drank really pungent kombucha. And I don't know, I just think that story's cool, that she feels like she was able to use kombucha to heal herself. Whether that is scientifically accurate or not is one thing, but I mean, I just think it's a cool story. And yeah, anyway, I know I'm going off on a tangent, I guess, for that, but all of the GTS kombuchas are also organic if you're into that. And yeah, so also I think GTS was the first kombucha like on shelves in the United States, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I feel like nobody cares about these random kombucha facts, but oh my god, okay, it doesn't taste that bad. It actually kind of tastes like sparkling cider, or like apple juice, or like a sparkling apple juice, which I guess would be apple cider, right? I don't know. Anyway, so we're gonna get into the main topic, which is the coronavirus and the extreme response that I've seen from people in result of the virus. And I'm not an expert on this topic. I'm just going to start off right now. I've done a little bit of research, and by that I mean like about 3 hours of research. So like, obviously do your own research. Don't take what I say as 100% fact. Things probably will have changed since then. So things will probably have changed since I recorded this. So that's just what is accurate to me from my research. But obviously do your own research and don't take what I say always as 100% factual, because you never know when people do research. Okay. Anyway, so I listened to a few podcasts on this topic to and from school because it's kind of a long drive. And I've noticed that it's a lot more complex than people are really researching, and just the extreme amount of response that I've seen on Twitter of people just saying the most ignorant and racist shit I've ever heard in my life. And none of it is like actually rooted in anything factual. It's all just racism and xenophobia. I just feel like everyone and their grandparents' cats have an opinion on this virus. And as of today, from the small amount of research that I've done on this topic, I think the official reports show that the death toll is now around 106. And there have been around 4,581 confirmed cases. And the youngest victim to pass away from this virus has been 36 years old. And I saw on the news just as I was like about to go leave to do the research for this podcast. I like to like go to different coffee shops and stuff, and like it's a vibe. Anyway, I saw on the news that they're working on getting Americans out of the area. I'm not exactly sure how. I know they have different like CDC, like I guess screenings that they're doing at different airports is also what I've seen. So here's the kind of information that I've gathered from the internet. Again, do your own research. Never take what I say as 100% factual. Your own research will always be like the best source because you are you. And like, okay, anyway. From what I've seen is that usually viruses don't want to kill the person necessarily because they want to thrive in your body and they want to pass on other viruses to people of like the same species. But like when the virus goes from like an animal to a human, it's like introduced to a new environment because it's used to being in, you know, the environment of whatever species that it was in previously. I know that just from what I've seen, to try and stop spreading the coronavirus, it just says to, you know, like obviously cover your nose. Like if you have like a runny nose, like clearly like don't just like spread your juices all over the place, and, you know, don't touch infected surfaces and stuff like that. And I know some people wear masks, whether those are 100% effective or not. It's best to just kind of avoid crowded places, which it's just kind of, and that's how kind of everything is interconnected. And what I've been noticing just from those small amount of symptoms, it sounds like viruses and diseases that have been spreading in the United States is what I first noticed when I was reading those symptoms, but that's just something I'm going to get into later. But, it just kind of shows how all of this is interconnected, that when we have viruses that flourish in larger populations, usually those populations are going to be filled with people in poverty. And when their bodies are introduced to diseases and viruses, obviously their immune systems are a lot weaker because they don't have the proper economic funds to really prosper in life. And they don't have access to like getting different vaccines and different shots and whatever and medical care and all of this, and it just kind of shows how everything is interconnected. And what I've noticed from all of this is that those symptoms, like I said, runny nose, covering your mouth when you're sneezing, and touching like infected areas, that just sounds like common sense. Some research that I didn't know was that there's different types of coronaviruses. And an example of one is called MERS. I'm not exactly sure if that's how you say it, but it's MERS. And it stands for Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. And that's killed, I think, like about 800 people. And it mainly appeared in like areas like Saudi Arabia, and then in other, you know, countries such as like other countries like within the Middle East and like Africa and Asia and Europe and stuff like that. Obviously, it spread to those places. And then there was another version of, I believe, a coronavirus, because there's different, I guess, types from the research that I found. And there's another one called SARS. And I remember the podcast that I was listening to. That sound that I did, I was like, bald. Anyway, sorry. I remember the podcast I was listening to mentioned SARS, which stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. And that killed, oh no, girl. Honestly, okay. This could be 114 people in 2003, or this could be 774 people in 2003. I cannot read my handwriting. That is awful. I'm gonna go, wow, I have no idea. It really could be either or. My handwriting is just not the best. That's what I said. Like, take this with a grain of salt, because I mean, I did 100% do great research. I'm not trying to down myself or act like what I'm saying isn't factual. I just really can't read my handwriting. I'm sorry, but there hasn't been like any reports though of SARS as of 2015. So it's something that has faded, but it was once a coronavirus. So we have definitely, and that I know spread a lot through Canada too, I'm pretty sure. So we have seen different coronaviruses before, and they have phased out. I don't know if that's through like vaccine or anything like that. I'm not exactly sure, but that's that. But I guess in December of 2019, there was another outbreak in China. I think they decided to call it 2019-NCOV. That's kind of like the name, the official, I guess, scientific name of what this coronavirus is, but everybody's kind of just been calling it a coronavirus, which I guess is kind of problematic in itself, which just shows that a lot of people aren't doing a lot of research, because I didn't even know there was different types of coronaviruses. So kind of just labeling it coronavirus just seems like it's so like scary. I mean, and not saying it's not, and it's killed 100+ people so far, so I'm not diminishing it or acting like this isn't a big deal or so serious and like sad, but I'm just saying that it kind of makes it sound like, oh, this scary thing that came from China is the coronavirus, when we've had other examples, I guess, of different types of coronaviruses before in the past that have spread. Anyway, so like I said, the symptoms of the coronavirus are a stuffy nose. You might have a cough, a sore throat, and sometimes children can get ear infections, which I think is also just interesting because those are like common cold symptoms, and it's crazy that that could lead into something fatal. But something that I noticed from my research that I quoted was coronaviruses are common in fall and winter in the US, but anyone can come down with a coronavirus infection at any time. And I felt like that was the perfect way to start this podcast, because people are acting like it's the crazy Chinese people that they're eating all these crazy animals and that's why they're getting sick. And we're going to dive straight into that later on in the podcast, I promise. But it's just kind of crazy that just from the small amount of research, and I know there's more to it, and I know probably even someone listening to this probably knows more than I do, and I'm just sharing the small amount of research that I did do because I wanted people to maybe who don't know about the coronavirus, which I don't know how you couldn't know, but it's pretty popular. But I didn't want to preface, I guess, this topic of the racism that I've seen come from it without kind of explaining what it is, even though I'm not 100%, the go-to person, like, but I just thought it was interesting that it said, coronaviruses are common in the fall and winter in the United States and can infect anyone at any time. And I think it's kind of crazy to think that we are labeling these viruses as like a racial thing anyway. I just decided to highlight that quote again because the amount of ignorant people labeling Chinese people's like such awful names and like such awful racial slurs and judging them as if they're are exempt because they're white or they're American. It's like so crazy. As of today, transportation in and out of the city of, I think it's Wuhan. I don't really know if that's right. And I've heard it pronounced. I just suck at pronouncing things that aren't like super American because I'm ignorant. But I think Wuhan is the name of the city where the virus, I guess, originated, and it has spread to more than 15 countries, which is kind of crazy. I also think another thing that's interesting is that, they're kind of quarantined this city. I believe from the podcast I listened to, they didn't really have travel, or I think they completely restricted travel in and out of that city. And that's kind of crazy because 11 million people live there. I don't know. I just feel like that's so crazy that many people live there and it's kind of quarantined right now. I mean, that's a whole like city. I don't know how many, hold on. How many people live in Sacramento?
As of 2018, the population of Sacramento was 501,529.
How many people live in Wuhan, China?
In 2018, the population of Wuhan was 11,895,000.
Okay, so in my city, which I know there's different like little small counties that people in Sacramento, which is the city that I live in, would consider Sacramento, but it's like not. But I mean, even that is less than probably like, I don't know. It said that we were about 600,000 people here. And that's crazy because it seems like there's so many people here. And to think that there's 11 million people in this one city where it originated and you've like completely cut off access to travel to 11 million people. I just think that's so crazy and so insane. And I just think that we're so focused on like the wrong things of like trying to call Chinese people barbaric and crazy and like all this stuff when like, wow, like this whole city of 11 million people, you guys are acting like they're savages eating rats all day, like acting like all Chinese people, all of them eat the same way, all of them like all love live mice. It's just so crazy. Anyway, so last time I checked, it was linked to a seafood wholesale market, which is kind of crazy because I thought, because I saw the rat video of the like Chinese guy, I guess, and I don't know if he was Chinese. I'm not exactly sure, but I guess like Asian guy. I don't know. I feel bad. I don't really know if that's, I'm just gonna say Asian guy, but I don't know. But I guess I'm just gonna say guy, but I guess him being Asian plays a part in the story. So he's of some Asian descent, I think. I know. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why I feel so bad, but anyway. And he was eating rats or something, and like they were alive, kind of. They kind of looked paralyzed or stunned or whatever. And I thought for some reason that video was linked to the coronavirus, and everything that I've read has nothing to do with that. It says that it comes from this seafood wholesale market, and I feel like that could be logical of any seafood wholesale market anywhere. I mean, we have those here, and the same thing could have happened here. I mean, just you never can predict with animals. I mean, it's a whole body. First of all, it's a whole being that has its own organs, its own way of that body functioning. You can't super control that, especially when you are, as a country, slaughtering 4 billion animals a day. You really think they're going in and investigating every single one of those animals' bodies to make sure they're super healthy? No, I mean, it's bound to happen that any kind of mistake and like disease and stuff that comes from eating animals is going to happen, because you're dealing with feces, you're dealing with pee, you're dealing with vomit, you're dealing with birth, you're dealing with babies, you're dealing with breast milk, you're dealing with blood, you're dealing with organs all over the place, you're dealing with underpaid, exploited workers who were been reported to defecate and like urinate where they work because they're under such extreme conditions to produce these products at these alarming rates for these snotty ass first world Westerners that need to have 10 different options of meat at the supermarket when they get there. Like, we are bound to have some kind of illness and disease break out from these awful conditions that we are keeping these animals into. So to act like this is a Chinese thing when it's just, we were never meant to have animals and breed them at this scale of 4 billion a day. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, it could happen anywhere is basically what I'm saying. And it's interesting to see, because I think killing 100 people is like pretty wild, but the World Health Organization has determined the virus to not yet rise to the level of a public health emergency. And so they haven't declared it a public health emergency, which I think is kind of crazy, because I feel like killing 100 people is kind of a big deal. And I would determine that to be a public health emergency, but I understand the weight and how it is politically and economically not smart to just 100% determine something a public health emergency when it comes from such a place that we have such strong trade and I guess trade deals with, and to kind of determine the place where you're getting all of your goods from. A public health emergency is not really good for business for these countries. So capitalism. But anyway, like I said, it's all interconnected. All of this is interconnected. So I think that might play a role of why the World Health Organization hasn't determined it to be a public health emergency yet. But I could be wrong. Obviously, that's just my interpretation. And also the girl in my the podcast that I was listening to, she also said trade might be a reason why they haven't declared it a public health emergency yet. Again, that's just speculation. I don't really want to focus on what the coronavirus is. I just wanted to give you guys kind of like a background to kind of help, I guess, bring clarity to what this is. It's not just coronavirus. So yeah, I want to focus on the extreme amount of racism and prejudice behaviors from all different races, but in particularly a lot of white people. I mean, it is what it is, but I mean, I've definitely seen this from all different races, and just the racism, like I said, the prejudice attitudes and behaviors and discriminatory behaviors that I have seen come from all of this coronavirus thing. And Twitter has just been, you know, one of the most awful places, and obviously I'm pretty active on Twitter, so I saw a lot of how this all unfolded, and it was so crazy to look at. I had to mute all of my tweets that I even tweeted. I think I tweeted about like 3 kind of defending Asian people and all the racism and awful things that people were saying about Asian people based off of this virus. So I'm going to read you guys some responses from just my own tweets. Like these are just people who have responded to me. And the first one is, not all cultures are equal. And I know this one is in response to me tweeting something about how we're no better than Asian people because we're American. And I just clearly we're not all created equal. Clearly we all went through different types of things that created our culture, and a lot of our cultures were lost, and a lot of people don't know their origins and things like that. But I'm assuming he is trying to say that, you know, American culture, which is white culture, is and to an extent, I guess there is like an American culture that all of us kind of have, I guess. Not all of us, but a lot of us. I mean, we're all Americans, so we all kind of have our own little like American ways. And I'm assuming that they're just saying that American culture, I'm assuming they're American, is better than Chinese culture. And it just like makes me feel so confused on how you came to this conclusion, because what makes American culture better than Chinese culture? Are you saying because you saw one video of a guy, like a Chinese guy, I'm assuming, an Asian guy, I guess, eating like rats, I guess, and you saw one video of that on the internet, and now you've concluded that your culture is better than Chinese culture? Another tweet that I saw was from the same tweet, and it said, some cultures are definitely better than others. Sorry, but it's an inconvenient truth. And it just like makes me cringe when I see stuff like this, because I know people genuinely believe that. I think in their hearts they have just casted Asian people as these crazy barbaric dog eating motherfuckers that are below them because they eat pigs and cows and chickens instead of, I guess, like the Yulin Dog Festival. That's always what they think of, as if like huge parts of China haven't been, I guess, urbanized. Another one that I saw was, I buy my meat in the grocery store where no animals were harmed. And I've seen this narrative, not to get too off topic, but I've seen this narrative a lot in people who kind of think because they go to the grocery store and their pretty packaged meat is there, that there was no harm. And that's just like not accurate. Clearly, if we're going to slaughter 4 billion animals in one day, obviously the sanitation in that is just awful. You have these people who are working in these conditions, not only that are like forced to produce such an, like they're supposed to, slaughter a certain amount of animals per like second or like per minute or whatever, or maybe it's per hour, I'm not exactly sure, or maybe even it's per day, but they have this constant pressure of to produce. So sanitation really isn't obviously their main concern, especially when English isn't their first language and this white dude just hired them. Anyway, that's another tangent. But there's so much exploitation and gross shit that can be in your grocery store meat. That's just ignorant. And then this is another narrative that I saw a lot on Twitter, and it says, for me, it's more about the disease. I'm well aware of what happens here, but we're not getting diseases from what we're eating. Of course, it's not every Asian, and even if I'm not from China, I'm still gonna worry because who knows how this disease could spread. And that's kind of where I'm going to start commenting and kind of dissecting a lot of these myths that people have. And one of the last tweets that I'm going to read is he kind of gave me little bullet points, which is just great. He said, number 1, what's a factory farm? And he put it in like quotes. Then he said, number 2, even if we're very occasionally cruel, we don't eat animals that are known vectors for disease. Then he said, number 3, I think the bats are a cover story for germ warfare research gone AWire. I'm not going to comment on the whole bat thing because that's not where this podcast is going. But I think it's also funny that he said, what is a factory farm, in quotes, like that was really woke or something, like they don't exist. What I really want to focus on is he said we don't eat animals that are known vectors for disease. And it kind of plays also into the other tweet that said I buy my meat in a grocery store where no animals were harmed. And I just kind of chuckled at both of those because there are so many diseases associated with the meat that we eat here. And I'm just going to focus, I guess mostly on Western areas or like European areas. E. coli, like from ground beef, BSE, which is, mad cow disease from cattle. I'm going to fucking slaughter this name, but it's trichinosis. I'm not exactly sure, but that comes from pork. Salmonella, obviously, from poultry and other kinds of meat. Anyway, there are so many like foodborne infections and intoxications that we get here in our own country. For example, mad cow disease, which is, I guess, also called BSE, and that stands for something that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. But that killed 177 people in the UK. But you don't have this stigma against people from the UK that they're going to come and spread mad cow disease. I know mad cow disease was a big deal, but it wasn't racial. It wasn't associated with white people, and it didn't have this everlasting effect that made everybody afraid of white people because they were going to get mad cow disease. Like, no, that did not happen, even though that killed 177 people. I also, just to like kind of get off topic, but while I was doing my research into, the different kind of diseases that we have that kill people, through like viruses or diseases or like foodborne illnesses and like stuff like that. Something interesting that I learned while I was researching about mad cow disease just a little bit is that, as a way to prevent the disease in the UK from, I guess, spreading, I don't really know how that really prevented it, but they would not allow animals older than 30 months to enter the human or animal food supply. So just like keep in mind that cows are expected to live 20 to 24 years. And that would make this cow a little under 3 years old. And that was considered, like too old, or they wouldn't accept that for consumption for even animals, pet food. They killed 4.4 million cows during the eradication program in the UK, which is, I think sometimes when you throw out numbers like that, like numbers in like the billions or the millions, like we don't really ever comprehend how much that is to lose 3 billion animals a day. 3 to 4 billion animals we kill every day. It's just insane to me. Like, it's just an awful number. It's just a number that we can't even visualize, and I think that's a way that it helps us detach, because we don't really have to, like, how are we gonna envision a billion? Like, it's just whatever. It's the circle of life. Like, it's so easy to cast it away because, like, what is a billion? Like, we can't even picture that in our head. So, like, what is it to me? But when you really like try and you really think about it, I think a lot of people really would resonate with that. If they really wanted to, if they really thought about the fact that, the fact that we do that every day, 1 billion animals for consumption, why? And I think most loving, compassionate people kind of come to that realization. To kill off 4.4 million cows during the eradication, I just can't imagine how awful that is, because not only did we determine that their lives mean nothing, which is barbaric, if anything, not only did we determine that their life was just useless and we just kill all of them, it wasn't their fault in the first place. I just feel like we're so entitled to think that we can just kill 4.4 million beings because we did this to them. Imagine you being born with your family stripped from you just to be killed because we spread a disease and don't want it to happen to us, so we're gonna kill you and 4.4 million of your brothers and sisters. Like that, it's just a mass slaughter that if it were to happen to humans, we would never let it happen, and there's no reason why, because they're animals, that it should be justified. Was that there was a petition in an area north of Toronto that they think that I'm a human, so everything that students who out for other humans before I look out for animals, and I mean stay home from school. That makes sense, because obviously you're going to look out for your own species. I mean, obviously I would expect a cow to like choose its baby over me. I mean, it's looking out for its own species, but that comes with an extent, you know? When it comes to killing 4.4 million beings, we really have to ask ourselves. People are saying, I'm not racist, I just don't think that they should eat those kinds of animals and then infect me. Love for meat and flesh and animal parts, like, really worth this? No one says anything to hunters that go out and hunt beautiful exotic animals and come back and eat them. Like, no one says anything about that. No one says anything about the white people that travel to Africa to hunt exotic animals there for the quote unquote really needy tribes. And no one says anything about feeding those tribes lion meat and all this other random shit. But now all of a sudden you guys have a problem with eating wild animals. I mean, no one says shit when people go and travel to foreign countries and try exotic, weird, and even alive animals on TV. Like, the narrative that I'm seeing is like, wow, look at those dirty Asians. Like, although dirty Asians is like nice compared to, obviously it's not nice, but I'm saying like compared to the slurs that I've seen, just the things that I've read of people talking about Asian people from all of this has just been awful. So it's just another way that people are masking their racism in you're better than them, and we don't get diseases from the animals that we eat because it's regulated. Of racist people. Yes, we get sick from animals in westernized countries all the fucking time. Like, you guys sit there and act like, oh, because they eat certain animals, that's why they're deadly. Like, bitch, bye, please. No. Like, we get diseases here from eating animals all the time. Saw like, with Ebola even, like, that's a whole nother thing where people were so rude and racist towards all black people. I mean, people were rude and racist towards me, and I've never even been to Africa. I don't know anyone even from Africa. SARS outbreak. And I'm going to like literally pee really quick. So if my voice changes, that's what's happening. Okay, guys, I'm back. But yeah, like I was saying about it, I'm not saying it's wrong to be concerned racism during like the SARS outbreak that happened in Canada, which also came from China. And during this time, Canada, from the research that I found, lost approximately $1 billion in sales due to people kind of avoiding the city, and especially areas with high Chinese or Asian populations and businesses. So a lot of people were, for children living in poverty and impoverished areas. We never hear them talk about that, but now all of a sudden we have a coronavirus. That's in Toronto. A blog reviewed a new Chinese restaurant on Instagram, and awful for them and their family, so I don't want to diminish that, but I mean, these things have, police brutality, all of these things have killed so many people. If you are concerned about your general public in your general area, you need to be concerned about the little black kids at your school, or, you're just ruining because you're racist as fuck. But anyway, the fact that our population and our generation is full of people who don't believe in climate change. Like, you should be focusing on all these things that are literally taking the lives of the people around you every single day homelessness, all these things that are public health issues that I've never seen majority of these white people talk about. I guarantee you the amount of Googling that they've done for police brutality, poverty, or anything actually affecting America is literally zero. But the coronavirus, like if you added all of those Google searches, the amount of time and research and times that they've like listened to people talk about issues that are really affecting America and like really killing us, I think if you added all of those up, it would still be less than the amount of shit that they've talked about this coronavirus. They are using this to mask their extreme racism and xenophobia that they have towards Asian people in their culture because they don't understand it, because they're not from there clearly. So they're going to use that to be fucked up people. Where is your concern for poverty? I don't fucking buy it, dude. I don't fucking buy this. This is my huge public concern. If you're concerned about just Toronto. So, I mean, like if people are really concerned about, you know, all of these viruses, then like I know it's rooted in racism because you clearly don't care about. I don't buy that whole public concern. I know that this is fear that the media is putting in our head. And it's not to say that this isn't a big deal or that this isn't something that we should be concerned about. It's just you shouldn't be using racism as a way to express your concern. You shouldn't be judging another culture for eating X animal when you eat Y animal. Hopefully it blows over and we find some type of vaccine or cure or something that's going to help. I don't know. I have no idea how that would even work. But the outlasting effect that this will have is major. The racism associated with the racism that Asian culture is going to face will live on way past this coronavirus. And 77,000 Black people, avid Trump supporter, that stated white people who are highly averse to germs, images that evoke thoughts of infectious diseases also increase bias against Blacks. So basically their conclusion was that, you know, that guy that's supposed to be a president, like I guess white people kind of associated a lot of diseases with a certain skin type. And that is kind of like the repercussion of all of this. Like even though when Ebola was kind of phased out, we still associate Ebola with Black people, with Africans, with if you go to Africa, you're going to get Ebola. Like with James Charles's tweet about Ebola, although I don't believe in cancel culture. You guys know that. And you guys know that I think that people are able to grow and learn from their mistakes and become a better person if they actually try, which I think a lot of people don't actually try to be a better person. And I don't know anything about James Charles. I just remember this tweet about Ebola. So don't try to come for me and be like, James Charles doesn't change. I don't fucking know anything about James Charles. I'm sorry. I just remember the tweet. I don't believe that. I know I'm going to say this and people are going to get mad. And it's just my opinion, I guess, but I don't really believe that people of color can be racist. I know that people are going to come at me and say I'm white and I've been oppressed because of that it's not racism, it is discrimination or prejudice, and that doesn't mean that it's awful. It just means that these are words with definitions, and racism is way beyond your Oxford definition in a book. Outbreaks are the fault of the oppressors that stripped them from the ability to help their country prosper due to centuries of economic and racial forms of oppression. And the fear should be on white people, not on Black people. It should be on colonization. It should be on poverty. It should be on war. It should be on all of these things. And the fact that it's so sad that Black people are now going to be associated with these diseases that shouldn't even really be happening. Like that's a whole nother tangent. But I know it was just like a stupid tweet that James Charles probably tweeted, and that was a stupid version of him, and the version of him now can be a completely different version that lives today of him, or it cannot be. But the problem is that them, and like I said, because they're eating X animal and you're eating Y, like it's so insane and crazy. From that area, like that is in question, but it also harms anyone who looks like that. And even though the version of you as a person might be different and you might have grown from your in a society where we do not have to do that, I mean, imagine how much we would obviously save the planet, save land, save water, anything like that. Like, you might feel like you are a different person now, but those things that you've done and those things that you've said, you did contribute to that we could prevent if we just didn't factory farm animals like this. 2 Rwandan students, coronavirus, but not about mass shootings, domestic terrorism, white nationalism, and more, is all because you are xenophobic and you have xenophobic tendencies. I mean, we all grew up in a society based off of xenophobia. We all have a xenophobia living in us. And we have been conditioned by society to be this way. When just because they were Rwandan and had no signs of even being affected with Ebola, you have delayed that child's education based off of racism and nothing else other than that. Effects that come from racism from white mistakes. And a white mistake is a phrase that I kind of came up with on my own, and I don't know if anyone else has actually coined this term. I highly doubt it because it probably sounds stupid, but it's something that I came up with that I've just kind of always had in my head that I guess I'm now sharing. So it's kind of vulnerable, but I know people are going to judge it, but it's just kind of something that I've used and a term, or I guess phrase that I've used to kind of describe this phenomenon. And a white mistake, students from countries with confirmed Ebola cases. And they sent this to all Nigerian applicants. Like, Nigeria wasn't even a racially insensitive act that they may have come to terms with later on in life, that it was wrong and that they may not have, and they may like have learned from that mistake and realize that it was awful and that, they're a better person now and they've learned. They have Ebola. Because of that mistake, it has chronic effects on the oppressed person, or the person being oppressed by your race. At the end of the day, everything I'm saying is viruses are not racialized. They can occur at any time and anywhere in any person, and we've seen that throughout history. We have seen white people come, colonize, and wipe out 80% of the Aztecs. We saw that happen. 80% of their population wiped out from diseases from nasty ass white people. Sorry. But I mean, like, for you to come and talk about Asians being barbaric and, Africans, they have diseases, when your own fucking people are responsible for the huge mass murder of Jews, of African Americans, of Black people, of Indigenous people, of Afro-Indigenous people. And not only did you slaughter their people and fuck with their family trees and fuck with their ancestors, you fucked with their culture to the point where we had to create culture out of scraps. We had to hold on to something. We had to create something positive out of awful conditions and turn that into culture. And that's just something that you're not going to be able to put a band-aid on. And I just think it's so crazy and ironic that these people, I mean, not even just white people, but a lot of white people have and cancers and diabetes are running rampant in our communities, and it's all a form of racism and oppression. And we deal with that repercussion because we were brought here as slaves. I mean, it's so much more complex than that. But I mean, no amount of I'm sorry that this is happening to you, even though I'm not sitting there blaming the white person really next to me because slavery. I mean, I know that person didn't do slavery, but you are reaping the benefits. And I know every day that my people built this country. People of color built this country. And I know that's a small, inconvenient truth for a lot of people. But I mean, the Civil War started because of slavery. It started because the South wanted to keep their slaves. I mean, people are going to try to act like there was another version. No, like, read the secessions. All of that had everything to do with using Black people as slaves, and we built their wealth. Majority of their wealth came from slavery. Like, we built this country. We did. And we didn't get anything out of it. We got killed and slaughtered, and now you can drink at the same water fountain as the white guy, and now you can go to school with the Black girl. Cool. Slavery was wrong. And it was we are still suffering resonate with that, and we're not united, and it's just awful. Mistake, although it's much larger and much more complex. But white people will say, like, you know, get over slavery. Like, why do you still feel hurt by that? Went to jail. Now, you know, you might have lived in this neighborhood for a while, but now you have to move because either you can't afford it or you have to move closer to the prison that they're at or whatever you have to do. I mean, the communities are being broken up. So that means you have more renters, which means you have more people who are moving in and out, which means there's no sense of community. All of this is interconnected. You know what I mean? And so when it comes time for white people to have like these kind of white mistakes that, yeah, I grow, yeah, I learn, and yeah, I'm not saying that any of that is bad. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad, but I'm just saying that the chronic kind of my problem with, you know, all lives matter, and I don't see color, and I'm an individual, and not all white people this, and not all white people that. Kids on in the land that they make money for at a slave wage is the land that was built off the oppression and injustice and death and slavery of their people for white people to prosper, because blacks are continuing to live on their legacies in ghettos and getting slaughtered by police in their homes even now, not let alone on the street or out buying like food at night or just driving in your car or whatever. Like now it's like being black in your home is even a crime. I mean, we are even getting slaughtered just because that black person in the house looked like a threat, and you think I'm joking. I'm not. Kind of where white people get uncomfortable is that when it comes time to address racism or anything like that, they immediately get kind of defensive and say like, but like I'm a good person, like I'm not bad, like I don't hate black people, like this and that, instead of realizing that, hey, I might have some racial tendencies, I might have some racial oppression, so that you can become a better ally and a better person because you're actively working on your bad qualities. And like I use the spectrum example because it's like with some person named L or something like that, and some other account that I blocked, and I remember seeing I believe it was the account that I blocked say something along the lines of like, but I've punched a Nazi, like I'm not racist, or like some shit like that. And it's like, why do you think your good deeds excuse you from your foundation? You should be a good person because like being anti-racist is the right thing to do, not to like shed your connection to whiteness, because that's a part of you. How I view it, like heteronormalities are ingrained in me. I don't get to just put a rainbow flag in my bio, take a picture at Pride for my Instagram, and claim individuality from the heterosexual society that my foundation was built on, that came from all of this, is going to have such a prolonged chronic effect on the Asian community. And it's sad because we are no better than Chinese people. We are no better than African people. We are all just people living on this populated circle that's floating through the sky, and we're all just trying to get by, and we are doing it in ways that are so destructive and racist and sad and oppressive. And we all have so much to do and work on to become better people. And we really need to look at how the things that we say really affect people. Because I know when I was in the 8th grade and I was very ignorant and I was very religious, and I remember gay marriage was up for vote, and I believe that it didn't pass at first. I'm not sure, but maybe it did pass. I'm not exactly sure, but I remember being in 8th grade and something was happening with gay marriage, and I just remember saying, but like, I don't believe in gay marriage. And like thinking that now is so awful, and I can't imagine like, I mean, and I grew up in a very religious household, so I thought that like LGBTQ plus issues were like weird, and I didn't really understand them, and I had to actively learn and like unlearn so much of that, and I I know some of that is still ingrained in me, and I know that I have to work on that. So it's not just white people have to work on racism and people of color are perfect, because we're not. We, especially Black people, have so much transphobia and homophobia that runs through our brains and runs through our blood. I mean, we all have stuff to work on to, you know, increase our spot on the spectrum. Being heterosexual. And I was built off the normalities that benefited me. And I can't really do anything about my past, but I can become more quote unquote woker and try to increase my spot on the spectrum. And that comes from, you know, listening to oppressed people instead of listening to about oppression from the viewpoint of the oppressor. So that comes with actually going beyond your history class where your white teacher teaches you about Black History Month for like a month. Or listening to this podcast, let me know and take like a picture, like screenshot it and tag me, and it'd be cool to like know what you guys are doing when you're listening to this, like if you guys are getting ready or if you guys are like, just detach myself from those because I think I'm a better person now. And it's the same thing with racism. You can't just say I'm an individual, look at me as an individual, when part of a collective of what made you you was based off of oppression, and it's your foundation is based off of white privilege. And that's a whole another topic that I definitely want to dive into. And I know a lot of people aren't going to get it. And I know a lot of people aren't going to resonate with this podcast. Like I've always said, and like I always try to say in every podcast, you might not fuck with every episode of my podcast. And I think that's okay. And I'm learning, and I'm still learning, and some ideas that I may have had yesterday even I still have changed. So it's not something that you're gonna be 100% eradicated from immediately. So anyways, I'm gonna go. I know I'm babbling, and I know this is probably a really long episode. It might not be your episode, or maybe this week was your favorite episode. I don't know. I've only had 3, but let me know. But I'm gonna like close this all out because I know I've been talking forever. If you guys have any ideas of what you guys want me to do for my Black History Month series next month, I have a lot of ideas. But if you guys have any, you know, Black veganism topics or anything that has anything to do with Black in a productive and loving way, and obviously I can get passionate and like I'll raise my voice, and everybody, you know, has different passions, and I think that's what makes me love my podcast so much, is because it's just me, and I just kind of get to vent instead of always having to like explain myself so much. It's just me being me, which is sometimes not always perfect. Anyway, but I'm gonna go, and thanks again for the support, and I will see you guys in next week's episode. Bye. Yeah, I actually have a really cute theme that I have in mind. So follow me at Kombucha Hour on Instagram. And subscribe to my YouTube channel, because apparently I can't like monetize any of my podcast episodes, which means I can't like make any money off of them. Not that it's about money. Get paid for, you know, the amount of work that I do to put into my podcast, and I think it's kind of fucked up that they don't really let you monetize anything until you've hit 1,000 subscribers, which I remember just even on my actual channel how hard it was to get 1,000 subscribers. But if you guys would follow my podcast on YouTube, it's just at Kombucha Hour podcast. I'm sure if you just type it in there you'd find it. And you can also subscribe to me at Tyra the Taurus too, where I'll be posting some videos there. And please let me know if there's any topics that you guys want me to cover. And if you guys want any clarity on topics, I know some of you guys messaged me about last week's episode and had questions. And I think that that's so cool and dope. And you guys had feedback for me. That was so sweet. I like love that. And if you guys have any questions and need clarity, just message me. I'm totally down to have the conversation. Sometimes I just get so busy that it's hard for me to respond to everything in such depth, and sometimes I forget and I check messages and whatever. It's a big bloody fucking mess, but I'm sorry, and feel free to like say, hey, did you get my message? And I'm so sorry. Like I genuinely am never trying to ignore anyone. I just have so much school that it like kind of consumes my whole life. And just to kind of end this, like I said,